year 10 to the next lesson. As you can see from the title, it says 1700 to 1900, medicine in the 18th and 19th century, Britain, but with the key focus on vaccinations. The last time you had a lesson, we were looking, if you think about the last few lessons, we've been looking at Florence Nightingale and how nursing improved and how hospitals improved. Then we moved on to looking at surgical treatments, looking at anesthetics and looking at antiseptics and how treatments improved in surgery. We're still on the same period of time, so it's still 1700 to 1900, but now we're looking at prevention, so a specific focus on prevention for this one, not treatments, prevention, and specifically vaccinations. Before you start anything, before you do anything, what I want you to do is define these keywords. You'll see here on this first slide that I've given you 6 different keywords. So in your books, after you've written the title, first find the definition for those particular keywords. If you can't find any, or you're not clear on what the definition is, then do email me and I'll probably give you one, but you should be able to find these relatively straightforward. You won't understand the lesson if you don't first and foremost look up the definition of these words. Some of you will know some of you won't, so do look those up first. Right, so in terms of vaccinations in the 1700s to 1900s, we haven't come across vaccinations before. So in looking at prevention, if you think back, remember, always go back before you go forwards. In terms of prevention in the Renaissance period, nobody knew anything about vaccinations. Nobody knew how to really prevent disease per se, beyond quarantining yourself in a house, like when the plague of 1665 hit, or trying to leave the area. No one had really figured out, even from a public health perspective, and obviously we're living in the midst of a pandemic right now, so no one had really figured out from a public health perspective, how do we stop diseases spreading? And you might actually, this lesson, you can draw parallels to what's going on right now, because what we're saying about COVID-19 is that effectively there's no real way to stop it until a vaccine comes along. So what this lesson is actually about is about the birth of vaccinations, and the key individual in the British context is looking at a gentleman called Edward Jenner, who came up with essentially the first major vaccination in Britain. So what you're going to do first and foremost, if you look at task 1, is you're going to watch the clip again. I'll send you an email with the link for the clip, and the clip will also be in the description underneath the YouTube video. Watch the clip first, and like with all the previous lessons, I said be ready to feedback, but what I want you to do is the second task, which is just explain the story in your own words. So once you've watched it, write down the story in your own words, like what's it about? As far as you understand, don't read anything, don't do any further work, just from the video, it's about 10 minutes long. What do you understand about the story of Edward Jenner? How did he come up with the first ever vaccination? What was he observing? What was he looking at? What did he inject? How did it work, etc.? Why is he important? So just write the story down for yourself to get an initial understanding. Pause the video, don't just watch it straight as 10 minutes. Pause it in places to get a full understanding of the Jenner story. Then when you've done that, read the document, the Word document I've attached in the email. So you're going to read, let me just see, you're going to read the first you're going to read the first 2 sections, which you'll know because they're in bold headings. Read the first 2 sections, and then you're going to answer the question here, which was, why was there initial rejections of Jenner's ideas, and why were they eventually accepted? So Jenner comes up with a vaccination against a disease called smallpox, as you will have noticed when you watch the video. But despite him coming up with a vaccination, as usual, when we've studied everything in medicine, some people accept it, lots of people don't. Jenner's vaccination, the work he does around that occurs in the early 1800s, but the government doesn't make it compulsory for the whole country to get a vaccination until 1872. So effectively what I'm saying is, I want you to explain to me, why was there a rejection of Jenner's ideas? Why wouldn't people just openly accept it and say, yeah, this guy's come up with a vaccination, let's make sure that we use it to stop smallpox? And then why were his ideas eventually accepted? Then section 3 and 4 of the Word document, I then want you to read further, and remember, you don't have to do things as a table. You can set the work out however you want, But when you read section 3 and 4, bold headings of the Word document, then tell me what was the impact of Jenner's smallpox vaccinations, right? So when I say short-term impact, I mean, what did it lead to immediately? What was the immediate impact that it had? And then in the long term, like many years later, and I've kind of alluded to it from the previous slide, what was a long-term impact of Jenner's vaccination and work on smallpox? And as I said to you on the previous slide, obviously the government eventually makes it compulsory. So that would be a long-term impact. His work convinced the government that maybe they should vaccinate the whole population and force them to get the vaccination as well. Quite similar to what may or may not happen when we find a vaccination for COVID-19. It may well be that it becomes a compulsory vaccination that the government insists that we all have to have. So go and look at the short-term and long-term impact of Jenner's vaccination and set out the work however you want. Then we return to pasture and kosh. So you may remember this was back when we were in school. Again, 1700s to 1900s, when we were looking at the cause of disease and ideas about the cause of disease. Remember, Pasteur finds germs. He comes up with germ theory. He disproves spontaneous generation and is able to show how germs cause disease, or causes decay or things to go off. Koch is able to use industrial dye to find specific germs that cause specific diseases. That's what we did ages ago, and that was on the causes or understanding the cause of disease. But in terms of prevention, Pasteur and Koch come back again. Because after Jenner does his work proving how to vaccinate against smallpox, Pasteur and Koch pick up his work. And based on what they had done about germ theory, they're able to apply their ideas from germ theory to Jenner's ideas around vaccinations and essentially find more vaccinations. But my question says, how and why were Pasteur and Koch able to do this? So the answer I've already given you, they basically find more vaccinations for things, but that's what they do. But how do they do it, and why were they able to do it? Okay, so go back again, that will be section 5 of the Word document. Okay, so go and read section 5 of the Word document. How did Pasteur and Koch come back into our story, but this time around vaccinations? How did their work advance Jenner's work on vaccination? Because Jenner, all he really does is find vaccination for one specific disease, which was smallpox. Jenner didn't find mass vaccinations. Pasteur and Koch develop his work. I want to know how, I want to know why they were able to do it. Again, as usual, any problems, any questions you're like, nah, don't understand, always email me. Don't just give up on the work. Email me and ask for a bit more clarity. And then once you've done all that, then summing it up. So my question says, why were more vaccines developed in the 19th century? I just want you to go back now. So over the slides of work that you've done, then think about what were the key factors at play. Remember, there are always 5 factors: science, technology, church, individuals, government. Every now and again, I come back to those factors and I say, which factors played a role here? How has it allowed this particular advancement in medicine? So in terms of the advancements that come about from vaccinations, which of those 5 factors, science, technology, church, individuals, government, played roles? And the clue here is more than one of them do. So explain to me which factors you think played a role and how they played a role. Don't just say, oh, science played a role. Okay, yeah, cool, which is one of the answers, by the way. But how did it play a role? Be specific. What was it about science that led to vaccinations being developed? Government plays a role. There's another answer. What was it about government that allowed vaccinations to be developed in the 19th century? So tell me basically which factors play a role and how did they play a role? Be specific. And then lastly, again, we just go back to the overall question that we've kind of been looking at over the last 3-4 lessons. Was there change or continuity in prevention and treatment? This series of slides, only 6 of them, because remember I like to break the work up. This series of slides is looking specifically at prevention. Okay, last few lessons have been about treatment or hospitals and medical care. Now we're looking specifically at prevention. So what I then want you to do is go back to 1500 to 1700 and now compare it to what happens in 1700 to 1900. What change has come about in prevention of disease? Sum it up, just summarize it, quick bullet points. What's the major summations and bullet points? Maybe 3 or 4 bullet points. What are the major changes in terms of prevention? So effectively you're just summing up the course of this lesson. What were the major changes that came about with regards to prevention between 1700 and 1900? And the clue is here, there's loads of change. Okay, But do go back and look at 1500, 1700 when you looked at prevention, and look and see, is there any continuity? But like I say, the major thing I want you to focus on is a summary of what are all the key changes now that have come about in terms of preventing disease. This is only six slides, year 10. Okay, so this due date, as usual, is Thursday, and this should take you no more after you've watched the video, which is 10 minutes, 40 minutes max, then some to do all the work around these slides. And then, as usual, when you send this to me, whenever it's due Thursday, I will then send another round of work on the Thursday night or Friday morning, which will be due on the Monday, with then some Seneca to follow up as an extension. Check your email, all details will be included in there. Yeah, that's it. But email me if there's any concerns. Thank you.